Hello, welcome to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. This is the new streaming network, and we are live right here, and we're home of the Going Bold Media and the Going Solo Media. And we want to thank you so much for joining us here today on Link to Expert Goodreads Authors Corner. I have my good friend here with me, Joanne Weiland. Joanne, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, I just get so excited because number one, I love to read. Number two, I love to meet new people, or maybe not even in that order, maybe both. But anyway, I always love when we have these different authors on the Goodreads because of the fact that we can all learn so much from their vast knowledge and all their insights from many times decades, or at least, years of experiences that they can share with us in, our show and 20 to 40 minutes, depending. And we just love that they're willing to share this. So, Cece, I just always get excited when we have the Goodreads Authors Corner because of the fact that, people get to meet these people live as well, whether video or audio, but still just to learn from them. It's just fabulous. So, I'm so
Absolutely.
excited to have, this opportunity to share people like Dr. Karen Kramer with the world.
I agree. I just everything we learn here on the network is just so fascinating. And those of you that don't know me, I am Cece Shatz. I'm the Doyenne of relationship building, and I am also the founder of the new streaming network. But today we're going to talk about something that's so valuable, it's so important, and it's something that really truly touches all of our lives. And we're the I just get so stumbling here because I am so overwhelmed with how important this is. We have Dr. Karen Kramer with us. She's a grief recovery expert. She runs a retreat center. She's a founder of that. She's a mindset um, facilitator, and she's a speaker, a wonderful author. She's got a wonderful book out. Her kind of motto is healing hearts and inspiring minds, and I'm just so thrilled to have her. So let's just bring her right up. Hello, Dr. Karen.
Hello, great to be here.
It is great having you. Absolutely wonderful. We all experience grief sometimes in our life, and it's just so valuable, so important to be able to have you here on the network here with us. And you've written a wonderful book because we're just, we want to talk about that healthy grief, normalizing and navigating loss in the culture of toxic positivity. And it's just, you can find the book on Amazon, of course, on our website. We're going to share that with you, of course, drkarenkramer.com. But let's get into this. How did you, being who you are, how did you decide that you wanted to take this route with being, kind of a grief counselor, inspiring those to get through one of the darkest times in their lives? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, thank you, Cece. So I've been in the field of leadership development and executive coaching for over 30 years. And it's interesting looking at that, how I got into grief. So I'm going to backtrack a bit. And I had one of these days here about 12 years ago, just one of those days where I just lost it. I broke down where I was screaming and yelling at my husband and my kids. I hung up the phone on my mom. I cussed out my brothers, which, by the way, is not my norm. None of that is my norm. And I looked at the aftermath, where people are like tiptoeing around me, like they didn't know where if the bomb was going to explode again. And I said, okay, I need help. I need support. And so I went to see my therapist. And by the way, as I continue this is my story. Love therapists and medical professionals. They are there to help us. Just emphasize this was my experience and my story. So went to see the therapist who I figured was newly minted therapist. And she can tell looking at my background that she was a little nervous. And after hearing what had led up to that day, she said to me, I think you have situational anxiety. Don't you think you have situational anxiety? To which I'm like, I don't even know what situational anxiety is. But anyway, I walked out of that 40-minute session with a therapist being labeled with situational anxiety and sent off to anxiety group. Didn't help me at the time. And then I thought, well, I'm in my early 40s. Maybe it's hormonal. So I went to my doctor, shared with her everything that was leading up to that day. She cut me off after 2 minutes and she prescribed me drugs. Now, I'm the one who, aside from vitamins, hardly takes any kind of medication. So I refused that. I went home, and after another mini meltdown with my son, my husband's like, honey, you know that destination spa that you've been really wanting to go to, the one that for 7 days you go off to? And he goes, maybe this is a good time for you to go to it. Wink, wink. Like, let's get you out just a bit. So I'm like, okay, I honor that. I need a break from the environment. And by the way, it was heavenly. I got to go to this wonderful place and sleep, get away from everything, and had exercise, healthy food, massage, pedicure, manicure, facials, acupuncture. It was absolutely heavenly.
Oh, sounds wonderful.
It was so wonderful. Then within 2 hours of being home, I was bickering with my lovely husband again. Nothing to do with him and everything to do with me. So what happened on that day when I had my initial breakdown, before I got labeled prescribed drugs and only the temporary relief of a spa, was I had put my 18-year-old beloved cat to sleep on that day. Had to make the decision. But really, that was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, because that was what started my grief process. Because a month prior to that was when my beloved father had passed away. And instead of processing through the grief, which I thought I was doing at the time, because I'm a coach, I know the right things to do, really, I was preventing myself from doing it, getting distracted with all the logistics associated with his funeral, that by the time I put my cat to sleep, I started into that grief process and hit it hard. So that really started my journey around my own grief process. But fast forward here, 6 years ago, the love of my life walked out of my life. And I'm like, so at that point in time, I thought, I'm not going to go around the therapy route or the medical doctor route again, because I didn't think that it was dealing with the grief I was going through at that time. And going through divorce grief is another form of grief.
Absolutely.
So that really, it started me on the process of saying, even though I'm a coach, is getting into the field of work that I'm doing now to really understand what is grief. Grief is much more than death and dying. It's in everyday kinds of losses, which I'll get to here. And also recognizing with the type of clients I was working with, and specifically a year ago at the time of this recording, when I started writing this book, was also finding how grief settles in the body. So the big premise behind grief is informing people around what grief is, much more than just death and dying. It's in any kind of major loss, and also unprocessed grief will settle in the body. And two of the clients that really inspired this book, one had an ovarian cyst that, by doing the energetic work, the depression associated with her divorce in this case, the cyst completely went away. No scar, no nothing. And the other was stage 2 colon cancer after unfortunately, the suicide, carrying around the guilt of the suicide of her husband 5 years prior to that. And so this is not only about what grief is, but it's also about how can you process it healthfully without those issues settling in the tissues of your body.
Wow. When you're talking, I'm thinking about all the different things that we experience in our life that is a loss, right? And that we have grief over. And a lot of people experience that, don't really know how to deal with it. And you're so right that it does settle in our bodies. We do, a lot of what we experience as we get older, health-wise, is due to anxiety, stress, all of that we've experienced. And loss is one of those big factors, because we have a tremendous amount of it. And it can be as small as your kids going away to college. which is a wonderful, beautiful thing that you look forward to. You build your whole life making sure that they get their education and they go. And then when they go and they leave home, you're like, oh, and it's a loss. It's actually a loss for you that you have to deal with. And it's such a minor thing, but it can be a big thing for many, many people that struggle with that. And so the loss of relationship, a loss of retiring, you look forward to finally retiring, and you finally retire. And it's like, okay, now what do I do with my life? You've got this loss there, this emptiness. And so I think what you're doing is absolutely fabulous. I think making sure that we understand more about it, and your book that you've written, I think is wonderful. Everyone, you guys can get that right on Amazon or go to our website. We'll make sure we share that there. Dr. Karen Kramer, and that's Dr. Karen, Karen, Kramer, Kramer.com. So you can go there and get lots of more information that will help you go through it. But what kind of, tips or something can we give our audience to be able to start moving them into a positive way? Because I know I'm a divorce coach too, and a divorce dating and life coach. And that is the biggest hurdle that I feel that, individuals go through to try to get to the other side, is that grief part, covering, and I know, Joanne, you've just recently lost your father not too long ago. That grief was really, even though you knew it was going to be coming down the road, it's a difficult thing. So what can we give them to try to start rebuilding their lives again?
Yes, thank you, Cece. And I'm going to back into that question. So thinking about what grief is, and we've just described that here, is if you were to Google grief, it starts off with something like a significant event where we have a deep emotion. More specifically, I add on to that, which is when what once was is no longer. It's kind of like a book we may have where we're closing a chapter in our life where we had that relationship or we had that person, and thank you, like the empty nester, where our children were at home. We had that job. We had that identity. Anything where what once was, something happens and then it's no longer. But it's not like we just turn the pages and immediately jump into that next chapter of our life, because a part of us is still stuck in that past chapter. And that's part of that grief, is that love that we have for that person, that relationship, that identity, whatever it is. And by the way, this also goes for loss of hopes and dreams. Loss of hopes and dreams. Like one of my clients I was working with was so far along in her life, relationships and other things, and realized that she was missing out on an opportunity to be a mother. That was one hope and dream she had. And of course, when it comes to our hopes and dreams, we can say, well, there's always opportunities. And again, whatever those are, is loss of hopes and dreams can also be a loss. So when what once was is no longer. So thinking about the definition there, as well as some of the categories, one of the things that I do have in Healthy Grief is there are 30 grief survival case studies that are in there, 30 grief survival case studies. So I started, yes, it has some of my own stories. I also started with my clients, as well as interviewed other people who were helpfully enough along in their grief journey, where then I can provide these as stories, case studies, so that provides inspiration and hope for other people to say, how did they process through their grief? Because it is unique to each and every one of us, as well as there are some frameworks there that help people process through that. So in here, there is a 5-stage healthy grief framework to help people process through. So what I did was, with each story, was then place the framework on top of that story. So some people may gravitate towards a story of a loved one passing, or to your point, Cece, is a relationship that has ended, or the empty nester, or somebody who's gone through a maternity loss, Or a retiree, that's another one that I had in there. Same thing with empty nester is, hey, I thought retirement was going to be this great thing, but I lost out on my social network. I don't have the same structure anymore. I'm not traveling like I did before. Now what do I do with my finances? So all these kind of identity, and actually identity is wrapped up in all these various different losses. So setting that stage up, Cece, and getting back to your question, here is what I think about when it comes to grief to really help. The way we act and react around that loss has much more to do with what's underneath. What are our past traumas, triggers, limiting beliefs that we have? We're acting out of them. So what do I mean by that? We can have two siblings, for example, two siblings who both of whom have lost a parent, as an example. But how those two siblings act and react, their grief, has much more to do with what's underneath. So when a loss happens in our life, the first thing is be curious about it. How am I responding to what's going on? And Cece, I mentioned just before we jumped on here, my son here just a couple days before doing this recording, my baby ended up at empty nester. He's driving across country to school. And there was grief that was coming up for me. Now, I know all the tools, mind you. I know all the tools. I can quickly get myself out of that state. But back to just the story I told about my father passing away, that would hinder me stepping in and actually processing through. So that grief that I experienced here a couple days ago opened up a window to me to say, what's the emotion that's underneath that? What's the belief? And to be honest, what came up, just completely honest, is I am alone. That was a belief that came up for me. I am alone. So that grief opened up the window to me to be curious about that belief that was coming up for me. So what is it about that belief that I may need to heal, to be aware of, which if I had used all my tools and switched my energy around, I would have prevented me from then being aware of that. So the first thing is to be curious. And then there's a second one here I will tap onto, and I actually do describe it in more detail here in Healthy Grief. It's thinking about the various different emotions that we may be going through. Different emotions. Now, there is Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief, and I'm not specifically talking about that. I actually mentioned it in here. But Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief actually was created for those who were terminally ill. What is the grief process they're going through when they know that the end of their life is coming? So recognize that that was her first, when she created that model, it was based off of that. Now we just decided, we just talked about it. There's all different kinds of grief that's coming, right? So in here, I do talk about a framework, which then helps people process through, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? How am I acting upon that? What support do I need? And really, what is the future vision? What do I want that next chapter in my life to look like? How do I know that I have processed and I have moved forward, not on, but forward from this past chapter, this loss that I just had? So there's a framework in there, but I want to share with you one of the frameworks around emotions that's in there. And it's the SARAH model, S-A-R-A-H, SARAH, S-A-R-A-H. And it's what are the various different emotions that people may have when they are first then have that loss. And the first one is shock. There's various different, by the way, various different words that you can associate with each of these. And this model, by the way, is something I've used with executives. So it's a leadership model that's out there. I've used it with teenagers when I'm helping them process through various types of different disappointments. So it's a simple model, and that's intended in here. Is Healthy Grief is what are those simple, easy models and frameworks that you can use with anybody, any age, any time, any type of loss, okay? So back to the SARAH model is when you're experiencing a loss, the first one might be shock. Okay, other words, numb, could be sadness, whatever that is, but usually thinking about, okay, I just learned this information. Even if it is a health diagnosis, I just got diagnosed, like this disbelief, this shock. The second one may be anger, right? Why me? Why them? How all this anger that may show up. And there's other words, frustrated and anxious, other words that may come up to that. And then at R, which is at the bottom, intended, is the resistance to what's going on, or it could be like this didn't happen, or like I've heard some people say it's the rock bottom. I hit the rock bottom of what's going on. It could be that R. Okay, again, shock, anger, R, resistance, but it could be rock bottom. And as we're starting to come out of it, the next A is acceptance. Like I may not like the fact that grandma passed away, or my ex walked out, or that I'm not going to be able to have children the way I thought I was, whatever it is. I may not like it, but I'm accepting that that is my reality. And then is more about that healing or hope. It is around, then you are not only accepting it, but you're healing from it and really are transitioning and moving forward in creating whatever that next chapter of your life is. So I think that also is a good way to just understand, kind of from a simple SARAH, shock, anger, resistance, acceptance, and hope or healing, is where am I in the grief process? Where am I? Because that's a big thing when I'm doing research with or working with my clients. 3 main words that come forward: overwhelm, lost, and alone. Overwhelm, lost, and alone seem to be the 3 words that typically come up. And that sense about lost, I don't know where I am, even when they can plot themselves and say, okay, today I'm feeling anger. Okay, it's part of the process. I'm going through it. I may hit that resistance. I may not. I may cycle back. It's okay, but at least I know what I'm going through is normal. I don't need to be fixed. I don't need to be told what to do. Grief is a normal, natural process. It's okay.
Yeah, it's just so spot on what you're saying. It's absolutely spot on. And the biggest thing for me is when I started going through my process after my divorce, is I didn't realize, and I hear this a lot from individuals, they don't realize they're actually going through grief, right? They don't even know what that is. So I think creating this awareness, this is legit. We're actually, there's a name for this that we're feeling and that we're going through, that will bring us to the other side of it so that we can start to understand it. And I love what you're saying about the Sarah. I think that's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And again, it's like, people go at their own pace. They often ask me, like, how long will this take, for me to feel better? Well, it's like, it's up to the individual, right? And it also is up to, I believe, doing some of the work that you need to do as you're processing, right? So tell us a little bit about that, because I know you help a lot of people. I mean, you have, different, retreats and, your center and things like that you do to help people do that. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, well, I'm going to start with a book because some people like the DIY, let me do it myself, which is a great introduction. That's what Healthy Grief is about, is introducing them to that framework to process through, as well as for those individuals to help other people through the grief process. Now, just like you mentioned, Cece, there's, especially when we're dealing with our deep loss, sometimes we're the worst people to be able to coach ourselves. That was me 6 years ago, thinking I could coach myself out of my own divorce because I'm a good coach, right? No, we're the worst people to see it. And just as I mentioned earlier, where I said when I was going through the being an empty nester with my son, I identified, and I'm pausing here because I've had multiple conversations this morning. I identified that what was underneath that for me is I am alone. I am alone. I identify that. So I have the skills to be able to identify what some of those past traumas, triggers, and limiting beliefs are. In the book, I give some ideas for people to be able to identify those. However,
Good.
not necessarily be the ones who are quick to identify those. But yes, to that point, Joanne, there are tips that are in here. So what I do is then I also provide master classes, which is the basis of it is healthy grief, to walk people through the content that's in there. And I'm excited because I also add in additional content in there, such as how to set healthy boundaries in a way. I also walk people through to help them identify what might be some of those stuck emotions or limiting beliefs, those past traumas and triggers that are there, to help identify some of those. So the master class is sort of a do along with you, right? And then what I love doing, which is many of my client stories, again, are in healthy grief. So it's doing that one-on-one work. Those are the people who want it just done for you type thing. It's like, I don't want to take years and years and weeks of therapy. I want to identify what this is now, because I know it's hindering me in my life now. Because grief is not just something where I have a loss in this one part of my life and it's only going to affect this part of my life. Okay. It's something we all know it affects other things. So people are like, no, I want to come. I want to be able to quickly and easily identify what this is so I can start moving forward in my life. Like Cece, you and I are working with part of my main focus here, even 5 years ago, was working with women who were going through an after divorce. Right? That was my journey. So I ended up attracting a lot of those women. And so it's like quick. It's like I was getting those professional women who I still do, who are like, okay, I'm going through a divorce. It's affecting my career. It's affecting how I'm interacting with my children. I want to be able to work through this now. I don't want it to draw out for weeks and weeks and months and months. So those are the clients I love working with. So I do one-on-one, I call them one-on-one personalized retreats, because they stay with me here at the Villa Vision Wellness and Retreat Center for 3 days. And really it's the deep work is on the third day, but all the work we do is leading up to that deep work in 3 days here at the Villa Vision. Yes. So in that work that's where we do the deep dive. So there are ways in which, yes, I can quickly and easily be able to identify what are those beliefs that are standing in the way. Like I mentioned, here's the loss, but what's underneath it? And when I talk about what's underneath it, it may be, here's the loss right now, let's just say divorce, but then we have another loss that comes up and it's the same type of things that are going to bubble to the surface. So when we deal with what's underneath, as we approach the next series of losses that are coming in our life, we then are much more at a healthier place to more easily process that grief. When my brother and my mother passed away back to back, 2 weeks apart here 2 years ago, I was able to more easily process through that grief than I was 12 years ago when my father passed away. And by the way, after my brother and my mother passed away, again, using my tools and still acknowledging and honoring where I was emotionally, I was able to, a week later, after my mom passed, jump back into a program, which I was the head coach teaching other people in neurolinguistics programming. So I was able to jump back into that program, be grounded and in a place where I was not going to be triggered when in my role, I needed to be able to be ready for those people who were going through their own emotions, over 60 people in their own emotions, and needed to be grounded. I did that in 1 week. Did that mean that I had processed through all my grief? No. What that meant was I was able to at least healthfully process through and honor where I was in that week to be able to be at that space. So having said that, again, it's around how then do we process through so that we are in a more balanced space. And so that's where with the Villa Vision Wellness and Retreat Center, I love doing the one-on-one work with people, because they're like, hey, I just want to get in and do the deep dive. And then I follow them for 3 months afterwards to celebrate all the amazing things that are happening in their life. which many of this is also coming up with their body coming back to balance. No more are they having I mentioned already, the ovarian cysts. They're not having the headaches, the body aches, and the pains that are happening. So even their body coming back to balance after they're releasing a lot of what's getting in the way.
Yeah, I think this is wonderful because, you know, you can start out with the book, and, you know, of course we've shown the book here, Healthy Grief, Normalizing and Navigating Loss in a Culture. So you can get that on Amazon. So definitely, if you're going through this, and I hate to say it, but it's almost like almost everything we experience in life, you know, there's a loss there, some along the path, you know, as we go. And I know that you deal a lot with women, but I know men too, this could also take advantage of this, because there's a lot of losses that men go through as they're progressing in their lives and as they move forward, and especially when we go through a loss of relationships. And so, you know, then I love the idea that being able to go to the wellness and do something with you, a one-on-one deep dive type of thing, is because sometimes you need more. Sometimes you need a little bit more to be able to go through. And I'm sure you have different ways of being able to do that. If they cannot actually physically go there, I'm sure you can do something online, things like that. You can be able to communicate with them. But some people need to know that sometimes you need a little bit more. You know, having the book is great, and you'll be able to really create awareness of maybe what you're experiencing, what you're going through. But sometimes you need that just a little bit more of a jump start to be able to get through it and recognize what is really holding you back. And a lot of times it's like you said, you have to do that deep dive to be able to get in to try to figure that out and to be able to get through it. So I love it. I think it's great what you do. Absolutely.
I'm curious too, Dr. Karen, with the retreat, the Villa retreat, the Villa Vision retreat, do you also have groups there, or always only one-on-one?
No, I have groups as well. So I was trying to hit up on three main things. And by the way, also in the book, there are stories associated with men as well in here. I just said my ideal client, I tend to attract more women, but wanted to mention that men as well. Definitely. They're going through grief and they need it. So yes, and I actually do retreats as well. So when I started doing retreats at the Villa Vision Wellness and Retreat Center, I reached out to women. And this is before I even wrote this book. And there are women who were going through a major life event that led them to question, who am I and what do I want? Mm-hmm. And it's actually part of that retreat, the experience we had, and that then led to the book as well. So definitely the retreats I have, we're actually starting at the time of this recording, is getting into a season of even half-day events, full-day events, as well as daytime retreats for various different topics, many of which right now are around healthy grief. But I'm bringing in other individuals, like, how do you process through? I have a woman who focuses with women around hormonal balance, not using medications, everything to do with emotion clearing as well as what you're eating. I have acupressure, neurofeedback. Who did I talk to this morning? That was around acupressure. And the author of the Healing Questions Guide, you'll see this is one of my books that I flag and use on a regular basis. She's heavily referenced in my book. So that is her book is the Mind Body Bible. So whenever in my stories that are in here, the grief survival stories, any story that mentions anything about any kind of physical ailment or pain, then I reference her book about the questions that I typically ask my clients to unearth what might be the emotion or belief that's underneath that pain. So yes, doing the retreats are the other things I do, as well as just day events and half-day events.
But then do you also ever have, like, you have the 3-day for the individual? Do you have multiple days for the groups?
Yes. So the 3 days is the longest that I do for the retreats.
Okay. Because I think that, because I saw on your website where there was multiple people, it looked like at the retreat. That's why I just wanted to clarify. It's not only one-on-one. You have the choice to go as a group or one-on-one.
Yes. Yes.
Because I think different people, some people are more private. They would want everybody to know. And I love that you've asked them, who am I and what do I want? I am always so surprised when I ask people those types of questions. Many people have no idea what they want. And then they wonder why they do feel lost. Not that they aren't going through grief like you're talking about, but I feel like sometimes when they don't know their purpose or their passion, or what they want, or they're in denial of it because they feel like it might be silly, or why would I want to do that? My parents or whatever always thought that was something irrelevant. And so it's really, I feel like that is a big core of many diseases too, because when they're stuck and not allowing, like how both of you have helped so many people with loss, whether it be divorce or grief of different types, I think a lot of times, until they really do know what they want, they're going to use that kind of like to be stuck on, because of course we all have triggers, but a lot of times the trigger is because of course we didn't deal with the core issue.
Yes. And I'm going to capitalize on something you just mentioned too. There are 7 different categories that I have in healthy grief. So all the 30s grief survival case studies are filtered into 7 different categories. The first one is death and dying, okay, because that's usually what people think about. And to Cece's point, there's intimate relationships, so divorce or breakups. The third is other relationships, so family estrangements or ambivalent friendships. Then there is maternity losses. There is career. There is identity, which I'm going to come back to your point that you just made, identity losses. And then the last category is actually trilogy, where there is a number of various different losses, complex, compound losses, all at the same time. Now to the identity one. One of the other books that I heavily reference, I just have the dust cover, is Dr. Gabor Mate, which is The Myth of Normal. And as a physician, he actually, and there's a podcast associated with it, and I actually have the transcript of his podcast in my book under identity section because it's so powerful. So as a physician, he found that there were a number of women who were coming to him as a physician who were having a various different kinds of autoimmune disorders, rheumatoid arthritis, etc. And so as a researcher, he said, there must be something that's going on here for this amount of women who are having autoimmune disorders. What's going on? So he asked them what was going on in their life. And what he narrowed it down to was loss of identity. These were women who had gone through divorce. Who am I as a woman? Empty nesters. Who am I when I don't have, as a mother, when I don't have my child at home? Lost a job or retired. So who am I when I'm not a worker? So that whole loss of identity, and the phrase that I have actually given back to Dr. Gabor Mate, but I realize it's my interpretation of it, is loss of identity leads to pathology.
Wow.
Our loss of who we are, back to his research, weakens our immune system, which there is research around that. So psychoneuroimmunology, that body of work is around there. So our loss of who we are weakens our immune system and opens us up to even more disease to happen, and illnesses and ailments. So being grounded in who we are and knowing who we are, especially after some form of loss, not only is helpful and good to do, it can keep us healthy and alive. Hence the title of my book, Healthy Grief. Okay. So I want to emphasize that around identity.
Well, I think people don't realize when you even say the word disease, it's dis-ease. When you're really not at ease and excited about your life, happy with what's going on with what you're doing, it really does cause this with the body. But could you repeat it again? Loss of identity leads to
pathology. So pathology. So illness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. No, I love that.
Sure,
really, people don't realize that
information. So if you guys want a free discovery call, all you have to do is then you sign up for an event. She's got events. You want to go on her website. She's got a couple of different websites, but we're going to direct you to this one is the Villa Vision website, but we're going to direct you to the Dr. Karen Kramer website, and it'll lead you right into the Villa Vision Wellness Center and Retreat. And there you can sign up for a free discovery call. So you want to make sure that you do that. And so again, it's Dr. Dr. Karen, Kren, Kramer, Kramer.com. And so make sure that you do that. And also, we have a free gift for you. So tell us a little bit about this free gift that you're giving away, because this is quite awesome.
Yes, there's actually a couple of them that are on there. So in the past, what I've done is say, hey, just get on a call with me. And some people are like, I don't want to get on a call with you. You're going to sell me something, right? And by the way, when one of the gifts that's there is an offer to get on the call with me. I love helping people. So whether I can support you or provide you resources to help you in any way, if it's not me, that's what I love to do. Because again, as Cece mentioned, I love healing hearts and inspiring minds. So whatever that is for you. But also there's other gifts that are out there. So I have an ebook that is there that can help you associated with, I think this one's on goals. I have to say, I think, because I change my gifts around here and there, but you'll have a quick download of a read. There's a meditation that I have there that is available for you. So for you're the type of person who wants to experience some of the work that I do with clients, that is there for you as well. So all of these gifts that I have that are there, and I think one of them actually is with this one, is the gift to get on a call with me to do a quick health assessment. I usually charge $4.97 for a half hour to get on a call with me to do a quick health assessment. So if you're curious, like, hey, I'm having this loss that I really don't know what might be under this ailment or this pain, major or minor, that's going on in my body. Again, those are the conversations I love having. Let's get on a conversation. So that's one where I'm giving a significant discount to get on the call with me to be able to do that. So there's some of the free gifts that I have, just kind of a pick and choose, all or nothing, to experience who I am and what I can do for you, even if it is just to give you some resources to help you live healthfully.
Well, that's wonderful. So, okay, this is a quick takeaway that I got right here. In just a second, she changes her gifts around. So you need to keep checking back on Dr. Karen Kramer's website. So it's drkarenkramer.com. Keep checking back, because she just said it here on our show. It changes them around, so you can really benefit from that and get some information. But I tell you, this is a tough subject. Grief is a very difficult subject, and we don't realize how much grief and loss affects our lives. And to be able to look at it and I think maybe incorporate healthy grief in our lives is important. And so it's kind of a learning tool, something we haven't thought about, something we haven't really experienced. And so thank you, Dr. Karen, for creating this awareness for us so that we can, better understand that the losses that we have in our lives and how we can deal with those without, I think, like you said, making us feel ill, without a lot of things that happens within our body is really our mindset, our feelings, things that we experience. And so if we can better understand, create awareness for that we can go through our lives a little bit, healthier and live longer. And so that's what we all want, don't we? So thank you so much for being on the show. I truly appreciate you.
We do. Thank you, Dr. Karen. Thank you so much for sharing.
Dr. Karen is one of our elites, so she supports us here on the new streaming network and are going bold and going solo media. So we want to thank her so much for that. So you're going to see her around here. We hope more and more to be able to share with us, to be able to heal those that are struggling. So we want to really appreciate everything that she offers and everything that she gives us. So thank you so much for doing that. We appreciate you. So any last words in closing you'd like to share with us, Dr. Karen?
Yes. Well, I will leave it at this as I think about grief is an everyday life. Okay. And even the Healthy Grief book, it's more than a book. It's a lifelong companion. So live happily and healthfully one day at a time.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm going to put you on a screen by yourself. So I want you to lift the book up so everyone can see that.
Okay, here's the book.
There you go. Awesome. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for doing that. So again, we want to make sure that you guys understand that the name of the book is Healthy Grief, Normalizing and Navigating Loss in a Culture of Toxic Positivity. And that is the author right here today, Dr. Karen Kramer. We thank you so much for joining us here today. Any last words, Joanne, you want to share?
I just want to thank everybody because I really feel like this is something that, we really do need to take seriously. And thank you for joining us and learning this. And we encourage you to go deeper because we all do want to live happy, healthy lives. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, you guys are listening to Link to Expert Goodreads Authors Corner. I am Cece Shatz. I have my good friend Joanne Weiland here with me. You are listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, the new streaming network.com. All of our information is right there. You can just go to the website. We are the home of Going Bold and Going Solo Media. So we hope you'll check us out. Join us here on our Roku station. We appreciate that. Of course, we're on all social media, YouTube, everything. Anything you can think of, we're on. And we hope that you will like, subscribe, and join us each and every time. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm Cece, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you.